From the nation's capital, this is The View from Washington with Congressman Buck McKeon.
How do you see the acceptance now and as we move forward? Or the states, one of the criticisms, they're setting lower standards so that they don't have as much problem meeting. Are you seeing any of that?
Well, I think, maybe you see some gaming of the system, but I would just say that, the reason that we can have these discussions and look at state standards relative to the national standards or even international benchmarks is because of the transparency and accountability of No Child Left Behind. One of the, I think, little heralded reforms in No Child Left Behind is that we now require every state to participate in the education report card. And, as a former state and local policymaker, as you are, I know that the people who are paying the bills, who are spending 91 cents of every education dollar invested, really are those that deserve the opportunity to set those standards, devise those measurement systems, and hold their own children accountable. And I think really with No Child Left Behind, we have found the right balance. We hear calls for national standards. I don't support that. I know you don't either. But I think, can we do better? Can we lift the standard continually over time? You bet we can. But as you said, rightly, this is the bare minimum that ought to be required of our kids. Grade level skills established by states within 12 years after enactment of the law. I don't know about you with your 29 grandchildren, but I doggone sure want my kids on grade level right now today. I don't want to have to wait till 2014. And I think that is what parents expect, that's what they're entitled to, and certainly that's what our world calls for.
12 years, we lose a whole generation
Absolutely.
of kids. I mean, if it takes that long to make things happen. During World War II, I talked to friends at home and kind of kid about it, but it's very serious. In World War II, the Pentagon was built in 1 year. Nowadays, we probably couldn't build it. There'd be some environmental endangered species or something that would cause it to not even be built. Or if we did, by the time we went through all the courts and all the things that we've set up in the way of doing something, we'd probably be through with the Korean War before we got the Pentagon built. And the same type of thing happens in education. By the time you go through all the bureaucracies and get people to agree on making some movement, all these kids have already gone through the system. So I'm with you. I'd much rather step it up, and instead of these people who want to hold everything back and let's wait, let's not, because every day these kids are in school that they're not held for accountability, we lose. Right. They lose, and the country loses.
Absolutely.
In this upcoming reauthorization, what are things that you would like to see us change? What can we improve? What can we do better? You mentioned growth models. There are some other things I'm sure that you'd like to see. Growth,
as you said, this differentiated consequences, treating schools that are within range differently than those chronic, on fire underperformers.
So I think those don't have AF.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some scales in between.
Exactly. We can do that. We can and must step up the opportunities for the free tutoring that has been brought to bear by No Child Left Behind. We have a lot of kids eligible and many kids that do not get those opportunities that they're entitled to, those opportunities that will help them catch up and get on grade level. That's another area.
Why don't you explain that? A lot of people may not even understand. That's one of the criticisms I heard as I went around is that the schools were very slow in getting that information out and maybe not as thorough, and some people may not even be aware that opportunity is there.
Well, that's exactly right, and I think we all need to do better about that. We need to make sure parents are aware of the opportunities their children have to get free tutoring, to get caught up so that they can get on grade level, and that be widely known and available to families. There are some models around the country, and then there are some places that can do a much better job. And as I travel around in the early part of this year, I'm going to start highlighting that issue for states and making policymakers aware of that. But it's interesting to me what educators often see as sanctions, which is the opportunity for these kids to get help, really is seen as by families as great intervention, help, and really a life raft for kids. One of the things that's really before us is, issues of kids versus issues of grown-ups. You talked about the bureaucracy, your Pentagon example. I mean, you know, who has the greater equities in this discussion? Should it be the adults, or should it be, you know, this generation of children that has been shuffled through the system with no accountability?
Yeah, I know it really is frustrating to parents when they see that they're not getting what they're paying for. You know, when the principles that we built No Child Left Behind on accountability, flexibility, more parental choice, sometimes this free tutoring is the only parental choice that they really get. You know, if they're in an area where they can't move to another school or can't take advantage of that, they really need to have that opportunity. And one of the other things that we passed under your leadership, President Bush's, was the Reading First program. You know, to give children extra help in learning to read. Sometimes I had a granddaughter that told my wife that she's starting kindergarten this year, so now she'll be able to read. All of a sudden, just by going in that door, she thinks that she's going to be able to read. But we know that it takes a teacher, and it takes working, and you don't get it by osmosis.
Absolutely.
And so the Reading First program was very important. Now this last spending bill that we passed, the Democrats cut that issue. Do you want to?
I sure do, because I mean, I think it's a great example of where we put, you know, adult interests over kid interests. You know, Reading First really is a program, $1 billion a year program, very consequential, that was based on what we learned from the brain science at the National Institutes of Health, that really was so informative to us about how human beings acquire reading and language skills. And we brought that to practice with Reading First. It is one of the most successful programs ever proffered by the federal government. And so I am just sick that the Congress took a 60% cut to that program. In California, it will cost you all $85 million. When the needs there are so acute. And California, I hate to remind you, you know, was an example of, you know, how not to do things in reading instruction for a long, long time in our country. A lot of states went to school on, you know, what not to do. But that tide has turned in California, and these resources that were invested now that will be declining because of the actions of the Congress with the new majority, I think really, really hurt kids.
Yeah, that's something that we get beat up all the time, that we keep cutting the funding for education. In reality, if you go back the 12 years that we had the majority and the time that President Bush has been in office, we have doubled the amount of money that was put in during the previous time going into education. And yet we'll probably get the blame, and in reality, we didn't get that. We weren't able to determine that priority. The Democratic leadership in the House cuts this program that has been so successful, and it is so important, because if you can't learn to read, you're not going to learn anything else.
Exactly.
And to take $85 million out of our state when it's something we really need is it's a crying shame.